is you get credit for completing it. It's not going to be evaluated, but you do have to complete each section. And I have something, well, usually the instructions tell you exactly what you need to do for each section. I will post an additional note as well. So anyway, in the first section, it tells you something about the poem and the poet. So you just read that, and then you press continue, and then you go to the paraphrase section, and it gives you the poem. Sometimes, in this case, it doesn't give us a reading of the poem, but in some of them it does. There'll be like a button you can click, and maybe the poet is reading the poem, or someone else is reading the poem. And then the first one asks you to paraphrase the factual information about this poem. So it's not the kind of, this is not the kind of paraphrase that we were talking about where you do a direct translation. This one asks you to just summarize. Okay, so, and if you read the instructions, you'll see that. It asks you to summarize in no more than 3 complete sentences. So in this case, you're summarizing. It may be actually useful for you to do a paraphrase outside of this. It's not calling for it. It's not requiring it. You know, wouldn't be fair to have someone have to paraphrase the Raven, which is like, I don't know, 50 lines versus this. So instead, what we're doing is summarizing. So 1 to 3 sentences, you put it in the box, and then you click submit your response. And then it will take you to the next part. Oh, actually, here is Langston Hughes reading the poem. So then you can listen to the poem, and then it's going to ask you another question. And we're on the observe section. So you're going to read through that. And let me see. I have another document which I'm going to post. And let me see if I have it open or requirements. Yeah. Oh, you know where I have this actually? But I'll post it somewhere else as well. Now that I think about it, I put it as a slide. Let me see, here it is. So I will update this PowerPoint. You can get it from here, but I'll also post this somewhere else. So this gives you exactly what you need to do. And most of the time it tells you. So paraphrase is 1 to 3 sentences. The observe section, I think, is the one section where it doesn't say specifically how much information it wants. So I have put it down here. I want 6 to 10 items. And the observe section basically asks you to do basically what we did with an evidence list. It's listing elements that you think might be interesting or important. So what are the words that might be interesting or important here? So you would choose some of those. You would say, so I put down here, let me go back to the PowerPoint. So the observe is 6 to 10 items. These are like evidence list items. They can be one word, that's fine, or they could be like a pattern or a contrast. So any of those things would count. The more items, the better. I was debating on like what my minimum number is. I've decided on a minimum number of 6 because some of the poems are short, but really like 10 is probably better. The more evidence you have, so evidence and observations, kind of these go together. What this is, when we do an evidence list, is we're making observations about the poem. That is, what are the interesting words? What are the words we don't know? What are some of the patterns and what are some of the contrasts? So these are all observations. Those are kind of 2 words for the same thing. And then we get to start using those to figure out how we might come up with an analysis of the poem. And that's exactly what this process on Norton is doing. The next section is contextualize. So it asks you to use some of the information you gained when in reading about the poem, or even do a little more research. You can, these are all fairly famous poems that you're seeing here. So you can probably get some more information about the authors, etc., if you want to. And then it's asking you here to to think about what context might be important. What do we know about Langston Hughes? So the biographical context. Well, we know that he was a Black poet who lived in Harlem. And so, the more we know about Harlem, in the I don't know exactly the date of this. I'm going to say 1940s or so. The better, the more we can talk about that context. Obviously, that's important for this poem. The poem is titled Harlem, so that's clearly a context. Is the real place and the real time and the person who wrote it. So we could talk about there's a context, there's a political context of race. What was the nature of race in America at the time that this was written? What did it mean to be a Black person? What was Harlem like? We're going to get into actually learning a lot more about that specific question, because the play that we're reading in the second half, one of them is going to be Raisin in the Sun, which is an African-American play that takes place around this time and features Black characters, and we're going to be doing a lot more reading in this area. But anyway, if this was the poem that you chose, this is something that you might want to find out more about. So we could think about biographical contexts, political contexts, right? What is, in this case, it would probably be racial politics. What was it like to be Black in New York at this time? The historical context kind of fits with that. And there's also literary contexts. So what other kind of writing was happening at this time? What did people have to say about this writing? And some of that will show up in the introductory part, and some of it, you could do a little more research. Bear in mind that, am I recording?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay. Bear in mind that ultimately you can use all this material again. This is what your first paper is about. So once you finish this, if you were to do this close reading on Harlem, then you're going to do another close reading on another poem for workshop number 2, which is in a week's time. You can use all of that stuff, all of the pre-writing you've done, to write your first essay. And your first essay is going to be either on a single poem, so you can write about this poem, or it might be a comparison of a couple of poems, which you decide to put together however you want. So, you can go back to the course syllabus and have a look at the requirements for that essay. But keep that in mind as you're doing this. The more you put into this, you will get that back, one in general learning and skill at doing this kind of thing. And I should, step back again and say what we're doing is analyzing that. Well, that's what the next stage is called. But keep in mind that this is this process, we're going to use the same process to analyze plays, and one can use the same process to analyze just about anything. Particularly text, but it can be used to analyze films and television shows and short stories and advertisements and all kinds of things, like anything that you want to know more about, that you want to take apart and look at more closely. Remember, what analysis means is it's asking the question of what something is, or what something means, or how it does what it does. A poem is, I'll say again from William Carlos Williams, I like his definition, as a poem is a small machine made out of words. This poem, is exactly that. We go back to this poem. This poem is trying to tell us something about the experience of living in Harlem in the 1940s or 50s. Maybe earlier, I can't remember. So that's, this machine has a particular purpose. It wants to tell us something about that, and it wants to tell us something about dreams and dreams deferred, that is put off. And this machine does that. So it's a good way of thinking about a poem. And then the question of how it does that, well, that's what we're doing in analyzing. So in this stage, you're going to go back to your observe list, and you're going to choose at least 4 of the items, or the last 2 stages. It can also be the contextual stuff. And then you're going to take those 4 and you're going to say something more about them. So, and so that's going to be in a couple of sentences, and each sentence, each analysis should include the phrase "is significant because." So, and those things might be his choice of this word, or it might be the rhyme scheme is significant because, or any of those factors that we're looking at, the tone of the poem, the kind of sound effects that it uses. It uses alliteration here because, and you're going to think about that. One of the things that I'll say now, because we're on Langston Hughes, Langston Hughes was real, as an African American, he was very interested in jazz and blues. And his poems often use the forms of jazz and blues music, which was, of course, extremely important to African American culture. And so he is, he's gesturing towards that kind of music and the culture and the lives that are encoded in that kind of music. So we could say something about his forms. And not necessarily with Harlem, but Hughes wrote a lot. I think we're gonna see some of his other poetry that's very specifically uses that kind of form, and it uses it to to valorize the forms, to say like poetry doesn't only need to be written in the traditional form of a Shakespearean sonnet. A poem could also sound like a piece of jazz music or a piece of or a blues song. So, so all of those things are going back to your observations. All right, so you're doing 4 of those, and then you're going to finally argue. And that is to come up with a paragraph that kind of presents a thesis and says, this is what you think this poem is about. And it's not, that's not going to take in the whole poem. It's the beginning of something. That this is the first stage, and ultimately you might take that further and write a whole essay. At this point, your focus is fairly small. So it's a paragraph, at least 5 sentences, that conveys your interpretation of the poem. And again, goes back and uses some of those observations. If you feel uncertain about what a thesis is, then do this. Please take a look at the pause and practice exercise on the literary thesis. I'll show you in a minute where that is. And that is the one actually that's required. It's the one out of the 8 that's required. So I would encourage you, if you feel uncertain about that, then you could go and do that. And that is actually not due until February, but if you get it done ahead of time, that's great. Finally, the reflect phase will just ask you a few more questions. So there's 3 questions. What aspects of the poem do you still find confusing? And I've said here 1 to 3 sentences each for this. All right, so that is the workshop, and that is due on the 20th. By 11:59, and it's due by just meaning that you've completed it. You don't have to hand anything in. You're completing it all within the Norton site, and it all gets sent to us. And I can tell you now that we're going to have, there'll be a TA for the class who will introduce themselves next week. They're not hired yet, but the TA is going to be reading through these and is going to be providing the TAs an advanced level. Will be a 4th year English student who's completed this class and completed a lot of other English classes, and so they're going to respond to it and give you hints on where you're going right, where you're going wrong, and they will also offer some office hours. So if you want to talk to them more about it, and I think it'll be a person it's a student, of course, and someone who will be easy to talk to. So that's the whole workshop process. And I will make sure that I post this information, but it will also be in the slides, which I'll update. Okay, where was my slide for today? What we're doing today? Yeah, so I think that's that lets you know what you need to do for the weekend. And then, of course, we have new readings for next week. Oh, I guess I should say one more thing about next week, though. This will lead us into the polls. My intention at this point is to see where you guys want to go in terms of class time. I think that we can definitely do this class with one synchronous class a week rather than two. But if the majority wants two synchronous classes, that's okay too. So I'm going to, well, maybe I'll just ask you that now. Hold on, let me stop sharing for a minute. And do we have any questions so far? Let me share the course schedule so you can see what that looks like, and calendar requirements. No, I'm gonna have to do that here. Okay, let me find calendar. Here's our calendar. Okay, so make sure you always have this handy. Again, this is like, you need to go back to this so it tells you what's going on. So here is where it gives you the 6 poems. No, I just put it in as January 16th, but it's whatever time before the 20th. Those are the 6 poems, and you can read them first and then decide which one you want to do. I do say also note that some of these poems can appear on quiz number 2. So this is a reading that's now, I expect that you've read all of those. So here's the way that so what I'm proposing is we could just have a Friday class and not a Wednesday class. In which case on the Fridays, so then our next class would be January 22nd. I would answer any questions about the work for that week. We do some activities like we're going to do today, etc. And the reading is lighter, always lighter on the Friday. The reading, the heavier reading probably is for the Wednesday. So what I think I might do is just ask you, Abigail, I see you have a question.
Hi, yeah, I just have a question about the Flipgrids.
Yeah.
I did complete mine, and I know
Okay.
Madeline did as well. I'm not sure about anyone else, but I know that we both completed ours. But I can't see hers.
Okay.
But it did say when I posted it that it had to be, like, it was hidden until it got approval from the educator.
Okay.
So I don't know if, like, maybe you just have access to them, but I know you said nobody did them, but I know at least the 2 of us did.
Okay, great. Thank you for telling me. Yeah, obviously I have to go in there and figure that out and approve that. So I will definitely do that over the weekend. So yes, thanks for that. I have to figure out how that works, because yeah, I opened it just on Moodle, and it looks like there's nothing there, but obviously there's another stage that I have to do. Okay, so I'm kind of curious to take a vote now on whether you want to do one class or 2. So why don't people respond in the chat, and I'll get Ethan to tally them, and we can see where we are on that. And while people are doing that, then I also want to point out that there are some polls that would help. And we're going to take a few minutes to do this now. So Ethan, do you want to share and take them through it, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I was just going to say I just posted 2 posts at 1 class a week and 2 classes a week. If everybody could just give a thumbs up for whatever one they choose, it'll be a little easier.
Oh, okay.
Answering in chat saying 1.
Right.
Okay,
one
person
so
said 2. Yeah,
Ethan's got a better way of doing this. Oh, I see. Okay, he posted. So you posted 2. Okay, everybody see that? We've got, yeah, that's a great idea. He's got 1 class or 2 classes, and looks like 1 class is looking like people like that. So and yeah, you know, and people who are, I mean, bear in mind that I also have office. So yeah, if if we end up going with 1 class, that you can always get more help by contacting me directly. Okay, Ethan, you want to show them where the polls are?
Certainly. So I'm just going to screen share for a moment here just to give people an idea of where to go to do the polls. So hopefully everybody can see this or has a second to load. Yes, so I don't know why these replies are open. No, they're not. Okay, never mind. There we go. So if you go to the Teams page for this class, just under General, that's the only channel we have right now. There are some polls. If you just scroll to the bottom of the page, it usually starts out at the bottom of the page, but you'll see this is the meeting we're in now. Just above that, there is a poll asking, the first one's up here a little higher. Do you have experience with online learning from last semester, specifically Teams? And you can just click yes or no and submit the vote, and we'll be able to see the tallies in real time underneath. And just below this one with the answers, there's, see these little purple letters here that says 16 replies from forums. If you click on that, it will open up the rest of this conversation, which is, I believe, 8 other questions that you can also answer for. And this will just kind of give us an idea of what we're working with and what people prefer. And there's a good number. I see some answers are already coming in. We've got
right, that's great.
Yep.
So yeah, so if everybody opens that now, and we'll take a few minutes to do that. So if anybody is confused about where to find this, just ask Ethan and he will point it out. But you're going to the main Teams, you're going to the main page for this class, and it's just that the trick is that some of the extra polls are hidden and you have to open the thing on the bottom of the first one.
I think I'll stop sharing there just so I can keep track of the chat if anybody does have any questions about how to get to that.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll hang out for a couple minutes to let people finish that. If other people still have votes, I see that the one class or two classes, if you didn't answer that question using the thumbs up, then do that rather than putting in 1 or 2. So add that as well, the thumbs up for 1 class or 2 classes. Because we only have
how to do that. You just hover over the post and it will give you a list of emojis will pop up, and you can just give the little thumbs up.
Okay.
And because it looks like 12 people voted so far, but I think
right. And how many people do we have here now?
16 people. So
okay, so there should be. Oh, I have. Oh yeah, 18 with the 2 of us. But there should be still 4 more people to vote on 1 class versus 2 classes. Okay, we got 1 more vote there. Okay, so we're gonna just hang for a minute while people are doing the polls.
And I don't know, Mark, if you wanted to share the results of the polls on yours.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Yeah, so that would be interesting. So then I would screen share and just share my whole screen?
Yeah, I guess so, and just open up the Teams app. Or if you prefer it, I could show them. But I guess it'd be easier for you to control it and read it over if you do it on your screen.
Okay, I'm on my screen, but yeah, maybe this is going to help people because, okay, I'm on, so I need to go to the team.
Yep.
And that's a team for a different class. So I'm going to our team, and now I can see them. All right. Oh yeah, and I was thinking that some of these, okay, let's see what we've got so far.
Oh, you just have to hit the little replies section.
Right.
Yeah, perfect. There you go.
Okay, so the first question, what question is this that has 73% saying yes and 26% saying no? Where is the question for that? Or is it the one underneath it?
Sorry, I was muted. It's a little bit above it. You just have to scroll up a little bit. There's a couple of
it's here.
meetings
Okay, right.
between it for some reason.
With online learning in Teams from last semester. Okay, so it looks like 3/4 of people do, 25% so far don't. All right. People, yes, definitely like a combination of synchronous and asynchronous, and that's my plan. And it seems like people are happy with 1 class a week. Attitude towards group work. Yeah, okay, got it. We will do some, but not a lot. I mean, especially as if we're going to one class, I think that's okay. Yeah. There are some things that it's really good for, and I do tend to use it more probably at the upper level, but so there'll be some opportunities. I mean, I think it's nice to have an opportunity to actually talk with people. And one of the other things that in a later next week or something, as I'm thinking about groups, I'll probably have another poll that asks people if they would prefer cameras on or cameras off in a group. And so I'll make groups that way. I'll put groups of people together who are comfortable with having their cameras on and want to talk to each other and see each other, and then people who would rather have their cameras off. So I'll do those things, and it'll be fair. It will be, just occasional. All right. Oh yeah, I'm curious about this. Either is fine. Online learning versus in-person learning. And I have both sec. Okay, no one's taken that. But yeah, people seem happy with either. And only one person in a different time zone. I think I know about that one, and we've been communicating a little. And we will work that out. And okay, one person whose first language isn't English. So that's good. And again, definitely we can, if there is more than one, I mean, that's a conversation that's worth having. If your first language isn't English and you're feeling like a little uncertain about that, do feel free to reach out to me and we can talk about that more. All right, 75% of people have taken another course. That's another English course. That's great to know. And yeah, okay, fair enough. Although that's actually higher number of people who like poetry than who don't, and a reasonable number of people who are scared of it, which yes, that's like one of my main goals here. And as you'll see from our discussion today, I hope that, because I want to do something kind of more fun with poetry, that one of my main goals is to change that attitude, if that's your attitude. And then plays, even stronger. People who enjoy it, and I know because Sydney, I'm guessing that probably there's some people in class who have experience with drama. There's a lot of cool drama stuff going on in Sydney, so you may be a person who's been involved in drama for a while, and there's lots of opportunities within the English department. There are great teachers who teach drama, and there's lots of drama production and other things. So definitely something to get involved with once there's a vaccine and we're back to normal. Okay, well, that's great. Thanks then for those. And then let's go back to, or let's move on with plans for today. So we ended, let's see, I did that. Yeah, okay, let's go back to Dickinson, because we spent some time on this poem, "The Sky is Low, the Clouds Are Mean." And then I was very rushed and we did my paraphrase, and we talked about, and I posted, I think, yeah, I'm sure I did, the evidence list. We kind of went through this and noticed some of the patterns and contrasts. This is, this is again, what you're doing in that workshop, or part of what you're doing in the observe stage, is you're observing these things. What are the interesting words? What are the new words? What are the patterns? What are the contrasts? But then also you're observing other qualities of poetry. What does this poem do with sound? Or what does this poem do with images, etc.? So we made that evidence list. I did very quickly go over its meter, I scanned it to kind of talk about the stuff about meter that's in the book, so that, and I know that this, like, for sure can be confusing. It's not like a, you know, I guess I'll say, this is kind of, you know, for people who are aficionados of poetry and want to be able to understand how, like, poetry is, remember the Norton introduction, and that was one of the questions, I think, right? That poetry is about a patterned, that was the answer to that question, I think, a patterned use of language, or it's about language that uses rhythm. At least, and traditional poetry especially, poetry that is written in meter especially has that quality. We can hear the rhymes very easily, but in Dickinson, we can also probably hear the meter. The sky is low, the clouds are mean, a traveling flake of snow across a barn or through a rut debates if it will go. We can hear that it flows in a rhythmic way, as opposed to when we're just talking, which doesn't, you know, the rhythm changes all the time. I'm kind of trying to show that by emphasizing the way I talk, but we won't find meter in, well, for example, you know, in chapter 1, Lana Turner Has Collapsed isn't a metered poem, though the poem before it, that's kind of paired, the Wordsworth poem, I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, which is in probably iambic pentameter, which is written in meter. If you read it out loud, and remember, that's what I said, that's the first thing you do with the poem, you'll hear it has a rhythm. Whereas Frank O'Hara's poem, maybe I'll grab my book and see if I can quickly find those, because those are good. They're good poems to put against one another to show us this. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Now, one, of course, it has a rhyme scheme. As does Dickinson, so we can hear that. But it's not only the rhyme scheme that creates that rhythm, it's meter. It's the fact that it goes unstressed, stressed. So that, like, basically goes da 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 da. That's iambic tetrameter. Whereas if we go down to Frank O'Hara, if you have your textbook and you're looking, this is 739. Lana Turner Has Collapsed. I was trotting along and suddenly it started raining and snowing. And you said it was hailing, but hailing hits you hard on the head. So it was really raining and snowing. And I was in such a hurry to meet you, but the traffic was acting exactly like the sky. And suddenly I see a headline: Lana Turner Has Collapsed. There is no snow in Hollywood. There is no snow in California. I have been to lots of parties and acted perfectly disgraceful, but I never actually collapsed. Oh, Lana Turner, we love you. Get up. I mean, there is he creates some rhythm. He does one thing through anaphora, right? There is no snow in Hollywood. There is no snow in California. He's creating something there through that repetition, but it doesn't sound like Wordsworth and it doesn't sound like Dickinson. So that's what this annotation shows. It shows us where the stresses are. And those are beats. So each one of those lines like this is a beat. And straight line, or often it's like a U kind of shape, you'll see in text sometime, is the unstressed line. And so we know that these are iambic tetrameter, because tetra is 4, and tri is 3. So it's the first line is iambic tetrameter, the second line is iambic trimeter, and it keeps going like that. It keeps alternating: tetrameter, trimeter, trimeter, except, wait a second, there's one moment where it changes. That second to last line, and something's happening, I think, also in the poem at that second to last line. Nature. We put the emphasis on the beginning of that. We don't say nature, we say nature. Nay has the emphasis, not chur. So that's how we know that is a dactyl. Stress followed by an unstressed. And then it goes back, like us is sometimes caught. So that's just an interesting thing to note. We are going to, in reading that, there's a slight change and something different is happening here. One, so that might give more emphasis to the word nature. And indeed, ultimately, this poem is a kind of definition of nature, right? It begins, this poem does two things. It begins with a scene. So if we think about this poem as, again, think about it as a machine, its job at the beginning, what the machine does is describe. That's what this poem is, right? It's a description of a scene of a dark, cloudy, low-hanging, ominous clouds in the sky and this flake of snow. Maybe it's a little drama. It's a description of a little drama, as if, you know, the snowflake is the protagonist of this drama that's trying to decide whether it can make it to the barn or whether it's just going to be caught in a rut. So the beginning of this poem up until the end is that it's a description. Then the last two lines change a little. Nature, like us, is sometimes caught without her diadem. What the last two lines do is sort of summarize. They like tell us in a way what this, you know, what does this scene mean? They comment on the scene. They say something about nature in general. And I think the question of what they say about nature is an interesting one to talk about for a minute. But anyway, we're talking about the sound, and that change in the sound there at nature tells us that there's some shift. We don't, of course, we know that anyway, right? I mean, we can figure that out by reading and by processing that something changes. But it's interesting that Dickinson has put emphasis on that moment by changing the meter. She also in some ways puts emphasis on the last words, and diadem in particular, because the other words, snow and go, are perfect rhymes. So the B rhyme here is perfect. But him and diadem are not perfect rhymes. They are half rhymes or slant rhymes or off rhymes. And so again, there's something not quite perfect about this, and it makes us linger on it. So, well, I could ask that question, and how can I don't know if I can, oh yeah, if I do that, then I can see what's going on in the conversation as well. So some of you have spent some time on this already, right? You paraphrased it. By paraphrasing it, here, let's go back to the version that says that. I had that question before. What does your paraphrase help you understand about the meaning of this poem, or about what this poem says about nature? Anybody want to try that, either in the chat or preferably unmuting and telling us what you think? I think, you know, in order to paraphrase it, you kind of had to figure that out, right? You had to figure out, what did you think those last two lines meant? And those last two lines are saying something about nature. Any thoughts? Here was my paraphrase. What I did is, how I paraphrase it is, nature itself, like human beings, and I think that's interesting. You know, she's making that comparison, is sometimes revealed to be pathetic. That's a very different view of nature than the standard romantic view of nature, which was the view of nature that Dickinson would have known well. It's in fact, we have a perfect example of that view of nature in I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, right? In I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, nature is a place of healing. It's a place of beauty. It's a place that human beings go. And so this is In I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, the speaker is walking in nature and is feeling down, is feeling despondent. But then he sees this, he sees these beautiful flowers, and the flowers change his mood. The flowers are kind of personified, and nature can offer this to us. Of course, we know this, people who spend time in nature. That's undoubtedly one of, the most difficult things about the pandemic for some people who aren't going out, is that like we need nature. So nature can be healing. This has something very different though to say about nature, right? This is not Wordsworth's nature, where filled with, let me grab Wordsworth again. If you go there, 739, this is what he sees: a host of golden daffodils beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of the bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. Gay here, of course, in the 18th century, happy. And jocund is in such a friendly company, etc. So nature is friendly there. Here, nature is like very different. So the question here kind of, is what is she saying about nature? Well, I think she's saying something like nature, like us, has its bad moods. Nature isn't just a place of solace. Nature, and we have other poems, like we have poems of the beauty of nature. We also have poems about the sublime and sometimes threatening view of nature. Poems that feature storms, etc., where we know that nature is threatening. Nature is all powerful. Nature can, as it does in hurricanes and tornadoes and storms, etc., can have devastating consequences. But she's not saying that either, right? What she's saying is that nature can be petty, small-minded, pathetic. Maybe like nature needs us in some ways to cheer it up. Nature can just be having a bad day and be complaining all day, feeling like someone's done him wrong. Caught without its crown. Shown nature, we might think of nature as a place of, and when we go back to the definition of crown, it's not, or of diadem rather, also has to do with dignity and honor. Sometimes nature maybe, reveals that side too, that it's caught with its pants down, essentially. So Dickinson is here kind of like working against the romantic view of nature, but saying something that's, I think also probably saying something about us, like it's okay. In some ways Wordsworth's poem may be a little, like Wordsworth's poem is the kind of poem like that. It's the friend who, when you're in a bad mood, says, oh, come on, cheer up. Come on, get over it. But some of us just like to dwell in our bad moods a little. And Dickinson's poem is a poem that kind of says that's okay. Yeah, some days you're having a shitty day and nature's having a shitty day. And you know what? That's fine. Even nature is like this. So it's not telling us to cheer up. As in some way, I'm extrapolating here, but some way that's what Wordsworth's poem is directing us to do. She says, yeah, it's okay. Okay, so I thought we would play with this poem a little, and what I'm going to ask you to do, well, I'm going to give us two choices. We're going to look at one more poem, and I'm going to ask you to take either Dickinson's poem, or we're going to look at quickly Introduction to Poetry, and I'm going to ask you to transform it into a haiku. So take Dickinson's 8 lines. Let's go back to her poem. We've got this whole poem. You have got to draw out or somehow, use its language. Here in this case, you can use the exact language if you want to. It's going to be a little, you may need to change some of it to make it fit the form. The form of the haiku, for those who don't know, a haiku is a 3-line poem that's metered syllabically. So it's easy to do. You don't have to worry about stresses. It's just 5 syllables. So I did this activity. Here's mine. A traveling snowflake, 5, far from home, battling the wind, 7, nature's crown put off. So I'm happy with my put off, because it's like we use that as a phrase, like you're put off by something, you're annoyed by something. Anyway, there's lots of ways that one could do this, right? That one could take Dickinson's lines and turn them into a haiku. So I'm going to leave you with some time to do that, but I'm giving you 2 choices. We've got 15 minutes, or I don't know, maybe we should just, yeah, okay, I think we have time. We're gonna have to do Billy Collins really quickly. This whole 2 weeks has been about doing what Collins's poem says, which is introducing us to poetry. And I really like this poem. And I love the title of his book that it comes from. So I included that. It's from The Apple That Astonished Paris. Which of course has buried in it somewhere, the apple that ate Paris, but it's not that ate Paris, it's that astonished Paris. Anyway, I like that title, but here is his introduction to poetry. I asked them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide, or press an ear against its hive. I say, drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out, or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. So I think Collins' poem here is, what it's defining something about poetry. And if we wanted to figure out what that is, well, before I talk about that, I'm going to just turn the exercise over to you. So we have 15 minutes still, so you can do this. You can complete this for sure in 10 minutes. Some people will probably do it a lot quicker. I will give you one more. Oh, you know what? I didn't put it in. Okay, I'm going to read you mine because I did one from Collins, but I didn't make a slide of it. I will read you my haiku that I did from this poem. So you have your choice. You can use Dickinson's poem and turn it into a haiku, or you can use this poem. You do not have to. You can do it however you want. There's no rules for this. You don't have to, it doesn't have to summarize the whole poem. It could just be one image from the poem. You might just go to that stanza, I want them to water ski, and make a haiku about water skiing. I will give you, once I find it, okay, here's mine. I'm just reading it to you and I will count the syllables. Poem is a light. Press your ear against its hive and hear its blinding. A poem is a light. Press your ear against its hive and hear its blinding. Oh, I like that too. If I can steal Collins's poem, I could try and publish that. Okay, so that's your task. You should have both of these poems somewhere. I can see if I can, I'm trying to think of how I can show them both at the same time. I guess what do I have to do? I have to duplicate this. You can start. at any time now. Okay, I'm and I want to see some of them in the chat. So start now. Use whatever device you have, or use a pen and paper if you have a pen and paper handy. This might work well. You know, you can do this completely on your own without their words if you want as well. You could make a poem that's just inspired by one of these, or you can, you know, use their exact language and take some of it out, but you're going to have to work with it because you got to get 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. Okay, I am setting my clock to and as soon as you're done, post it in the chat. Let's see what some people come up with. I'm giving you 7 minutes. So I think some people should have something by that point, I'm hoping. So let me set my timer, and then I have to figure out a way of showing both of these poems at the same time. I know how to do it because I have this one right here. Okay, it has... it's got that color on it, but that's fine. So you can take either of these poems, and your job is to create a haiku. And okay, I've set our timer. So, and as soon as you do, please put it in the chat so we can share them. What's a way that I could show these without, no, I guess I have to screen share. I want to see the chat at the same time. So, oh, it's under there. I see. Okay. I got to move my windows around so we can see all 3 things at the same time. There it is. But I need to just reduce this in size. Okay. This is a very different way of responding to poetry, and I think a much more fun way, which is to, like, I'm asking you now to write it. All right, I'm turning off my camera for a few minutes till I see some things coming in. I see that I'm just seeing the first lines of people's poems. Wait, where'd they go?
I didn't mean to post my first line. I deleted it.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, two people had posted them, but now they're gone. Okay, people deleted them.
If I had to guess, they probably wanted to start a new line and ended up hitting enter for a new line.
Right, yeah. So how do
button.
you do it so that you could do 3 lines without sending it? Do you know, Ethan?
You might not be able to do it in the
Okay,
chat. I'll
show you how to.
type it out in a Word document.
Yeah, I'll show you. Well, no, here. What we'll do is we'll just put a backslash. That's what you do in poetry. So I'm gonna type mine in now. This is my Billy Collins one. Is a light. This is proper poetry notation. Press your ear and so those backslashes, that's exactly proper poetry notation. So if you were quoting a poem in an essay and you're only quoting 3 lines, then you would write it exactly like that. You would use a backslash for where the new line starts. Usually if you're quoting more than 3 lines or so, then you would actually indent it, and it would be presented the way that it is in the poem. Okay, so we still have 6 minutes. I'm waiting for the first person. I know there are 2 people who might have one or might be close, Abigail and someone else I didn't see. So feel free. Oh, there's a time. Okay, I'll put my camera back on. Oh, I moved my desk down. Is anyone else sharing with us? Okay, make them water ski. Great. On a poem waving ashore to the author's name. Yeah, that's great. Can you break a sentence in 2 lines? Yes, absolutely. Right. It doesn't have to be a complete sentence per line. Yeah, mine kind of is, but no, absolutely. The line can continue. The technical word for that is the line could be enjambed. So Abigail's first 2 lines would be called enjambed. They're not, and the two choices are enjambed lines or end-stopped lines. Make them water ski on a poem waving ashore. Okay, cool. I like that. Morgan, scurry, little one. Give your secret gently now. Avoid the scrutiny. Oh, that's cool. I'm seeing the mouse from Billy Collins. Give your secret gently now. Yeah, that is really, Morgan, I really like yours. I like how it's kind of like you've got almost an interpretation there, right? It's like the mouse is in a maze, but it's not the maze that's important. Okay, Jennifer's. I ask to take her to appreciate her depth, but she is tortured. Nice. And Jennifer figured out how to do multiple lines without how'd you do it, Jennifer, without sending it? How did you make that? How'd you get it to do line return? Okay, I'm going to read Catherine's. Nature's dignity can be lost in the moment. Wait, I just lost it. Where is it? Nature's dignity can be lost in the moment. We all have bad moods. Yeah, nice. Nice summary of, oh, you opened a doc, okay, and then pasted it in. Yeah. But the black spot backslash is definitely a good thing to know in studying poetry. And that's really important to keep in mind because you have to use those whenever you're quoting a poem because we need to tell the person who's reading it where the line ends, because that's the number one thing about what makes a poem is like that the author is deciding on where the line ends. Okay, cool. Anyone else? And we are like almost out of time. So any questions before we go? So I did answer the question someone posted about, yes, we will, the plan is no class Wednesday, just class Friday. So that does mean that, the one reason, that's not necessarily great is that we won't have a class before the quiz. So that if you had questions that you wanted answered before the quiz, you'll need to, well, you know what I'm going to do? I mean, I think we have a forum already. Let me go here. Let me screen share for a minute. Did anybody else's? Oh, I am screen sharing now. Good. Let me go back to Moodle. Oh, no, I just stopped. Okay. Okay, now I'm screen sharing. And if I go back to our Moodle, at the top here, there is this forum of questions and help. So if you have course questions or assignment questions, this would be a good place. If you have questions about the material that you want answered before the quiz, so there's something that's confusing you, that is the ideal place, questions and help, to post it, because then everybody can benefit from the question. If you have a question about the material, it's likely that other people don't know the answer either. So that would be a great place to do that. And otherwise, next week, then we will have no class on January 20th. Class on the 22nd, and you will have written the quiz before 2:30 on the 22nd, which will focus on this reading as well as that reading. As well as I could ask a question about, no, sorry, not those ones, but these ones. And I could ask a question about those 6 poems as well. So that's what's covered on that quiz. And I guess there's no other, yeah. That would be the material. Okay, I think maybe we have one more. Kristen, in the freezing cold, I see the snowflakes fall down. The sky has turned white. Nice. Cool. And that's like, I like that because it changes the sky also, right? The sky begins. I mean, this is a revision in some way of Dickinson, right? Because the sky begins gray. And in Kristen's haiku, the sky is turned white. It's like concentrating or looking at the snow has kind of changed the mood of this poem. It's actually exactly, and I know we're at time now, but that's exactly the Howard Nemerov poem, which if I had more time, I would have done, because I think this is an amazing poem that's like 6 lines long. Okay, I'm going to take 1 minute to read it to you again. This is 761. It's the first poem in the Art of Poetry section, and that poem is titled Because You Asked About the Line Between Prose and Poetry. Sparrows were feeding in the freezing drizzle that while you watched turned to pieces of snow, riding a gradient invisible from silver aslant to random white and slow. There came a moment when you couldn't tell, and then they clearly flew instead of fell. This is a very clever poem about, it's actually, I was reminded of it because of Kristen's poem, because it's about watching the rain at a moment when rain is turning to snow. I don't think I've ever had that experience, but it's, obviously it happens all the time when we move from freezing rain to snow. And it's kind of like, it's about the poetic nature of that moment. and that moment has something to do with poetry. You can ponder that one a little more. I think that it's a great poem. Okay, well then we are done. So yeah, have a good weekend. Thanks for showing up. We will hang out if there are any further questions, and see you next Friday. Okay. Oh, Eugenie is here. Yeah. No, she's Eugenie. If you can hear us, I know you're having trouble with connectivity.
Able to turn on your microphone or not? If not, maybe
yeah,
just chat.
Mm-hmm.
My lines are bad.
Yeah, I could hear you that time.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not surprised that, yeah, you're in Cameroon. It's got to be, yeah, I'm sure internet is spotty.
Yeah.
So anyway, I can talk to you for a minute. Ethan, you're free to go. Send me that the attendance sheet when you get a chance.
Okay.
And yeah, thanks.
Ethan, please, I need your help.
Okay, what can I do?
I need help for the past classes.
Oh, sorry. Are you saying you need the recording for the last class?
Yes, Ethan.
Okay, sure. I'm just going to share my screen for a second, and hopefully you can see it. Yeah, so in order to find that, you would have to scroll to the very bottom. Oh, that's showing all the replies. Yeah, so usually if you go to this section here where the meeting is held, which says Introduction to Poetry and Drama, occurs every Wednesday and Friday at 2:30. If you hit the replies, it usually shows a video. It's not showing all the replies right now. Maybe it's because we're in a... Oh, see previous replies. There it is. Okay. And see more previous replies. So you might have to scroll up a little bit and see more previous replies, but the meeting will be in this sort of format here. You can see it, and you can just click on it, and you should be able to download it that way and view it. Does that make sense, Eugenie? Were you able to see that?
I can't hear you well.
Okay, sorry, the connection's kind of bad. So you say you can't see the screen right now?
I can see the screen, but I cannot hear you.
You can hear me, but you can't see the screen. Okay.
It's breaking.
Oh, is that what she said? Sorry, could you say that last part again, Eugenie? Let's check. Maybe you said something in. I can't hear you. Oh, okay. Yeah, so the connection's probably affecting the voice quality. Were you able to see where to go to find the video, though? Oh, probably can't. Still can't hear me. I'll try typing. scroll up. Chat. Yeah, so basically, if you just scroll up through the chat, you'll be able to see it. I think I'm still screen sharing here, but this would be it. Meeting download. And you'll want to download that within 20 days because it expires after 20 days. So if you can type in the chat or anything or say something to let me know if you understood that or if you able to hear it all. Not yet? Okay. Man, that does make things challenging.
I wonder if, do you think you'd have a better connection if it was if it's just a private chat? Is it anything about this being a class, or is that like really the same equivalent to a private chat?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like the connection's still bad, even with just 3 people.
Yeah.
Because I imagine like the number of people might affect the quality, but yeah. We had a student in my qualitative methods class that was from South Africa, and her internet was really bad too. I think she had to go to a friend's house or something where they actually had
Right.
Wi-Fi. Yeah, I don't know if they have like a library or anything like that where they have more reliable an internet connection that you can go to or not, but might be an option.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I'm seeing her icon, right? Like light up as if she's going to be speaking, but then we're not getting the sound.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll just put in the chat.
I think I'm still recording actually, so I'll stop.
Oh, okay, I can stop that.